P-E-N, an ink pen. All right, we need two back here. Anybody else? Ladies came prepared. Anybody else need a pen? Okay, back here. All right, have them back here. Anybody back here? Back row. Anybody else? All right, right up here. Good. All right. Okay, everybody has their notes or maybe some others. You want to put some on the back stand. If people come in back there, they can grab one, maybe a couple of pens in case they don't have a pen, need one of those. That'll be great. And I know most of you were here last night. Who was not here last night? Raise your hand. Just a couple of people. Okay, so we did some introductory remarks last night. I won't go into all of it, but basically one of the reasons that drives a lot of the things that I have written and what I've tried to help other leaders with through the years are things that I wish somebody had taught me when I first started in children's ministry. And the reason I'm passionate about children's ministry is because I didn't grow up in children's ministry, because I didn't have to go to church, and I didn't know literally anyone that enjoyed going to church. Every kid that I knew went to church always made fun of it. And so I don't have to go, I'm not going to go. And so my passion has always been, I wanted my class or junior church or VBS or whatever to be one of the coolest things that the kids went to, and not just to entertain them, but I wanted to capture their minds where they would come in and truly be interested in what we're talking about. Not just there to play the games, but I want them to want to play the games. I want them to want to play the games and let that be a carrot to get them there so that they can hear something that I know is going to impact their life. They just think that what we're doing is fun maybe, but I know the impact, the possible impact that it has. And none of this can be done without our volunteers. I understand most of you are volunteers, so I thank you for that. How many of you have been in children's ministry more than 5 years? Raise your hand. Okay, keep them up. You've been in 10 years, keep it up. At least 15 years, at least 20 years, at least 30 years, 35? That's like an auctioneer here. 40? Somewhere in there. We have one left. How many years? 50 years. Wow. Wow, yes. And y'all been here, what, 43, did you tell me? 35, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I was a Sunday school teacher when I turned 18.
Wow.
And that was it.
You had an early start. Okay. All right. Well, thank you for your faithfulness to do that. And so you've probably been to different things like this in the past. And so I'm sure much of what we talked about are things maybe you've heard of, but maybe it'll be a reminder for you to take and maybe do a little bit more with in the future. So this first workshop, we're going to be talking about capturing the heart of a child. And the word heart, you see, is an acrostic. I enjoy using acrostics as I teach, even with kids, because it helps us remember some of the points. And so maybe this H-E-A-R-T will help you to remember this. And we're going to play some games later. And so you want to be taking your notes and paying close attention so you can play some games and win some candy and all those fun things. And all that will be great. So I hope that you will enjoy that. A verse that has been extremely motivating and encouraging to me, and that has driven me through the years. This is a very short verse, so I can memorize it, so that makes it easy, okay? But there's so much truth in here, and that is Jude 22. Let's read this together. And of some have compassion, making a difference. God didn't write there, and of some having a lot of great ability, making a difference. He said, and of some have compassion, making a difference. You can leave here today and you can implement everything that we teach, but if you try to implement it without compassion, we're not going to make a difference, because the kids see right through us. Kids are so smart. They can tell who's in there out of obligation, in there out of guilt, and they can tell who is sincere and who is real. And every one of us, I pray that everybody in this room has a compassion story of someone that showed that kind of compassion to you and made that kind of difference in your life. For me, there's a couple of you in here know, whenever I explained last night, I got saved as a freshman at Angelo State University out in San Angelo, and then I went to the Air Force. My first permanent duty station in the Air Force was, of all places, Las Vegas, Nevada. And when most people think of Las Vegas, Nevada, they don't think maybe some good things, okay? But Las Vegas is a very treasured place for me. because it was there that I really got grounded in church. Literally, my first Sunday there, somebody in the barracks invited me to go to church. He didn't have a car. And so he's like, hey, you go to church anywhere? I said, I just go. But I enjoyed it. And so we went back the next week, second Sunday there, handshaking time. Man comes up to me. He said, hello, my name is Dean Brogan, like an old shoe is what he said. Over here. And he said, he talked to me for a few minutes. He said, are you in the Air Force? Yes, sir. He said, my wife and I'd like to have it. My friend was with me again. He said, I'd like to invite you over to dinner today. Folks, that was 39 years ago. And so I went over to dinner, and they began to ask me questions, and I would have known the term if he would have said it, but basically he was asking for my testimony. And he asked me, okay, well, so we got saved in January of 85, this was in 86. He's like, so where did you go to church? So I was like, I never really got started anywhere. I said, I've been to several, and I went through the story of the places I've gone. And I said, I don't understand what's happening. I said, I know I'm saved, I understand that. I actually got baptized while I was in basic training. But I said, the preachers always ask me to turn places that I can't find a place in my Bible. They talk about things I don't know. They reference stories, and they reference Paul, and then they all think they're Paul Harbors, and then somebody, the rest of the story. I didn't know the rest of the story, okay? I didn't know what was going on. It was so frustrating. They asked me to turn to a book of the Bible. I finally found that. Asked me to turn somewhere else. I said, no, whatever. You found a way over there. I'm sharing my ignorance with you. I didn't know there were the Bible versions. I couldn't figure out why sometimes I finally found a place in my Bible, and then the pastor was reading something that was kind of what my Bible said, but it wasn't exactly. I don't understand that. I was so confused. I didn't understand there were different versions. And so this family, his wife's name is Anita. He's been in heaven now. It's like 2002, I think. And but she lives south of Houston. In fact, I'll see her tomorrow. We'll wonder tomorrow to see her. I was stationed there for a year. And that year, that day, started something that happened basically every week. And not just Sundays. Because after doing that for a few Sundays, he told me, he said, you got a lot of questions. He said, you probably should come back to church with us on Sunday night. Just stay the whole afternoon. Come back with us on Sunday. That's weird. Okay, And so I started coming back on Sunday night, and then that continued. And then they're like, you still have a lot of questions. He said, you know we have a Bible study on Wednesday night. Like, people hold orders or something. Why go to church on Wednesday? Okay, so I'll be there. And it wasn't long after that God called me into ministry. When God called me into ministry, he taught, it was a church plant, it's a little church in the shopping center, and he taught the adult Sunday school class. And he said, I worked on my lessons, I think it was on Tuesday night. He said, come on Tuesday night, I'll show you how, he said, you're going to learn how to study your Bible, you're going to be a preacher. He said, come, so I'll show you how to learn my lesson. So I'd go over every Tuesday night, and just shouted at him, as he was going through his lesson. He'd challenge me, and I know what it's called, like sword the ocean. I said, look at this verse, so I do look at the verse, and I'll never forget that. That was somebody who showed compassion and made a huge difference in my life. I think it's very likely that if it had not been for them, that I would not have stayed in church. And I'm very confident if it had not been for them, I probably wouldn't have been in this religion. I would have had a wife, I would have had kids that I have, a whole life of it. I have no clue what my life would have been like if they didn't show me compassion. And they weren't a teacher. He wasn't assigned to me as a teacher. He was just reaching out to me. Because he was a Sunday school teacher. I would have probably never gone to Sunday school. I'd probably just gone back maybe a couple times to church and I don't understand this. But he took time, he got out of his seat, came over and talked to me. He reached out to me. So I hope you understand where I'm going with this. It's that compassion, that stepping out of the comfort zone. I thought when I moved away from there, I will tell you, whenever I pulled away from their house to leave, I was being transferred to Shreveport, Louisiana, where I would eventually meet my wife. And when I pulled out of their driveway, I was a plain mess. Because I knew the impact of this family had on my life. And as much as they promised me they were going to keep in touch with me, I just thought, how likely is that ever going to happen? They don't know me a year, you know? And I'll probably never hear from them again. They had already gone to the trouble, and this word I had internet to help me work there. And so he had gone through, I'm sure you're familiar with the paper called Sword of the Lord. He'd gone through the Sword of the Lord, and he had found 3 churches for me to go to when I got to Shreveport. And he said, this is the church I want you to go to first. And he said, you call me collect. After you go there, I want you to tell me about it. So I got there, went to that church, called that friend and said, I don't like this church. And I don't think it would have mattered, because it wasn't my church for most of this in reality. He said, all right, this is the second church, when you try this one. So into that one, and called and collect Sunday afternoon. I love it. This is like harmony. I feel like I'm back home. And so again, every week he said, call me Sunday afternoon, I want you to tell me about the message. And so he encouraged me to take notes, and I have to tell him what the message was about. You understand what he was doing? He was investing in me. And again, I thought, this is going to stop me. So you know, make sure I get church soon, and I'll just try to. I never lost time. I had a part of his funeral, our daughter sang, it was at his funeral. So 39 years, she has never, what? Been late with the birthday card or a Christmas card, not for our whole family. So this year is a very special year for us. I told last night, this is my 40th birthday as a Christian this year, and my 30th year of full-time ministry. Started at Kerby Richmon 30 years ago. And so this year, the church did something very special for us. They called it a sabbatical. They gave me 2 months vacation, extra vacation, in the county summer vacation time, to go do, for my wife and I to do whatever we wanted to do, as well as pocketful change to do with. It was not only a change. We want y'all to enjoy celebrating the 30th years. And so we did something that we will forever treasure. We called it our thank you tour. We traveled back to places that we have served. We went back to Ohio, spent some time at our church there. We went back to World College in Florida, saw some of my teachers there, got to visit with some of them. I got to go to lunch with some people that I worked with. Just saw people that were, again, huge influencers on us and our kids. My daughter was born when we were there. And then we were in Baton Rouge, so we went back to Baton Rouge. The only person I got to see there was Susan Wall. And so we got to go out to dinner with her. But the first stop, we knew the first place we had to go was in the city and spend it with her. And we would go back and go out there tomorrow for a few days. But because of the impact that she made, and he made on our life. When I met my wife, I called and talked to her because I was so scared. I knew God wanted me in ministry, and I knew how important that my wife was going to be to my ministry. And I didn't want to mess this up because it's like I'm going to get married before I get out of the Air Force and start pursuing my career in ministry. And I'm not sure how this is going to go. And they were such a blessing through all of that. And then when we got married, they flew from Las Vegas. They were never ready for Shreveport. Whenever we graduated from college in Florida, by that time they had already retired. They lived in Houston, the same house that she's in now. But they flew from there to Florida to get my graduation. Every step of our life, they've been a part of it. Why do I tell you that story? Because I want you to see what an impact, and to hear what an impact. That's the possibility of the impact that you're going to have. You may not have that 39-year relationship that you have that time with them, but that person, those kids in your class, because of the number of kids you have, you may forget their names. It may just happen, but they're most likely not going to forget you. How many of you can remember, and maybe not a Sunday school teacher, but most of us are adults in the room here, it's over teenagers last night, but how many of you can remember your first grade teacher in school? And a second grade teacher. This is going to explain a lot about me. I never went to kindergarten. It probably has lots of different ones here. Okay, I probably should have probably helped her go to kindergarten. But But I can tell you a great teacher I had from first grade all the way through 12th grade. Because of the impact that every one of them made. But some of it was not a good impact, right? So I want to, I hope this is like a private thing, but I want those kids that come to our ministry, I want them to have a good week. Because I made an investment in them, and I showed that compassion. That's what the drive comes from, is that love for Jesus, understand what He's done for me, and wanting these kids to understand that. Guys, you don't know. Ryan, I spent some time together last night. We talked to him about the joy of the long-term ministry. I didn't say this last night because it would be awkward for me, so I'm going to make it more awkward right now. But to stand here and look at a young man that when I met him, he was about Northern Science, and to watch him grow up and go into ministry, and now have his own 3 kids, a wife who loves him, and obviously loves his ministry, loves her kids. What a joy. Guys, somebody ought to write a verse. There's no greater joy than to see your children walking through. That'd be a great Bible verse with them, okay? And He's not my child, but show them in their ministry in that joy. So I want to encourage you to realize what the possibilities are in this room. My mentor would say often, never underestimate the potential of a child. Being Anita did not underestimate. I wasn't a child, I wasn't a grown man, I was a punk, but I was a grown man. They didn't underestimate me what God could do with my life. Never underestimate the kids in your classroom. You don't know. One day, someday, this guy, if I call him Warren, I'm not being disrespectful. Pastor Johnson, okay? All right. So one day, he probably would admit his age, okay? But one day, he's going to have to retire. And one day, somebody else is going to step out of that pulpit. You realize there's a possibility that you could be teaching that person right now? The man that is the pastor at the church where we came from in Ohio was a senior in high school whenever I arrived there. When he was a senior in high school, I took him on a trip to a pastor's school. And on that trip, we made a connection. He started helping me, and we became so connected. And we'd come home from college, he went to summer ministry. He graduated from college, and he might have worked with their ministry, Master Club, so good at work in Master Club, a lot of curriculum we and I worked together on. And now he's the pastor of the church there. There are so many people in that church that taught him as a little boy. Can you imagine their joy? To think that little guy said, I think he was in 3rd grade when he started the church there. Imagine their joy. You realize that. You could be teaching somebody who's going to be a follower like here in the missionary. You could be teaching the next Charlie Kirk. It can make a huge difference in our country. You could be teaching somebody that's going to be a doctor that can make a huge difference in the world, in that life. You don't know. So never underestimate the potential of a child. This is so important. And that's what motivates, that's what should motivate each of us to make sure that we're taking the time to prepare for our class, the time to add that extra love for those kids and make sure that we're praying for them and of some act of compassion making the difference. So let's begin to go through our notes. We have a lot to do today. I want to make sure we get through as much of it as possible. Oh, really? I'm running out of power already? We just got started, man. Let it down last night, maybe. Okay. Oh, okay. All right. All right. Let's get you fixed up here. Thank you. Those batteries are easy to replace them with other batteries. All right. Here we go. Thank you, sir. All right. Here we go again. Okay. So let's begin to go through our notes. And so as I said, we're going to go through an acrostic. H is going to stand for heart. If we're going to truly capture a student's heart, the teacher must have this heart, obviously, for what you're doing. There's a verse in Matthew chapter 6, verse 21 says, "For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also." Last night, I challenged the ones that were here, and I will say it again briefly, I won't spend as much time on it. But if your heart is not in that classroom, the best thing that you can do, this class is not going to help you. The best thing that you can do is just talk to the pastor tomorrow, talk to Ryan, whatever. I need to give this up. My heart is not there. Because when your heart is there, you're not going to mind making an investment that we're going to talk about being prepared for class. Because you're going to do everything you can. There's a lot of ladies here, and probably many of you are moms. As parents and as grandparents, we put a lot into our children. We put a lot into our grandchildren. And to us, we know it's worth the investment because we love them and we have that vision for them. We have that compassion for them. That's the kind of compassion we need to have for those in our class. So important. Many times we talk about the words shepherding our class and just loving our class through that. And just as we protect our children, we want to be protective of those in our class. I love this area around this church. Every time I come here, it's beautiful. I think Flower Mound is a beautiful area. The community around us is not as beautiful as far as newer houses and everything like that. It's much more of an inner city kind of a ministry. And so it is an extremely diverse area. Probably on any given Sunday, there are probably 25 to 30 different nationalities in our church. We have 2 English services, 2 Spanish services, a Burmese service in the afternoon, and we're working right now on developing another service. And it's just that diverse in our area. But with that diversity, there are just so many different kinds of people, and we have the opportunity to reach people from all different kinds of backgrounds. And as we go through that, people that come from different backgrounds sometimes don't understand our culture and don't understand personal bubbles like we have personal bubbles. And sometimes we have to have those conversations. Don't come up and take somebody's baby. Used to, people thought nothing of handing a baby off. And some people are not comfortable with that. And I think a lot of that was magnified through COVID, and some of it just kind of stuck around. And so sometimes we have to have those awkward conversations. We have a young man who is a teenager and got in some trouble with drugs, and then he's just made some other poor choices that I had to talk to the youth pastor this past week about a tough conversation we're going to have with him. And it's to the point because of some other things that have happened that he's really not allowed back in the youth group until he goes through some personal one-on-one counseling with the youth pastor, that we can learn to trust him again. And that is from a shepherding. That's not that we're trying to stiff arm. We're not saying, hey, you can't come to church. We're telling him, hey, we want you here, but there are some things that have happened, and we're going to protect our sheep, and our young people are our sheep, and we're not going to allow you back in this group until you can show that you have the right reasons for wanting to be here. That's a tough conversation to have with anybody. I'm thankful that his parents are very understanding. You got to have that conversation. The parents are understanding, and they understand exactly what we were doing. I've had to explain to people before, the ranch where we grew up. My parents are both in heaven now, and my sister and her husband raise sheep on part of it now. And we never were around sheep. Dad raised cattle. And sheep are very different. And obviously, the Lord calls us sheep. Sheep make dumb decisions sometimes, don't we? And sheep are sometimes defenseless. This idea of shepherding your class, you're there to protect your class. Part of that protecting gets into what is called being a mandatory reporter. Sometimes in the process of asking for a prayer request in a class, some things come up that are very awkward. And when something comes up about a prayer request, and that I've heard prayer requests before like this, please pray that my daddy won't beat me. Please pray that my daddy will stop hitting my mama. That's a whole different topic that needs to be discussed. But you need to understand, we are mandatory reporters. You can't just take that. You need to let your pastor know about that so that can be reported. And we are mandatory reporters in what we do. That has to be reported to child services. Those are tough things to do, but that needs to be investigated. And we've had to have conversations with you. And so, I mean, a couple of times I've had a conversation very similar to this. I said, my sister and her husband, they raise sheep. When they see a coyote on their property, to them, or a bobcat, to them, they know that a coyote or a bobcat has a very great potential of hurting one of their sheep. So they don't just sit back and watch it and observe it. They see it starting to go towards the sheep. They say, oh, I wonder what it's going to do. Are they just going to go out and play ball together, or what are they going to do? And one of the deacons was with me one time when I was having a conversation like this, and he really caught him off guard. I said, you know what they do? They shoot it. I said, we're not going to shoot you, I promise. We have no intentions of shooting you, but I'm not going to allow you to be around our sheep. We've asked you to respect. In one situation, it was a young man that was attracted to a young lady in her church. He kept walking with her into the parking lot to her car. And she told me, this makes me very uncomfortable. So I asked him, I said, please don't do that. She doesn't want that. So he starts giving her gifts, and we give it to her inside the building. Dude, she has asked you to please give her space. He didn't respect that. So we had to have that conversation. You're not allowed back on this property if you can't honor what we've asked you to do. We're going to protect our sheep. I'm not going to hurt her. One of his gifts was a Bible. So you're kicking me, you're telling me I can't come onto the property for giving somebody a Bible? No, that's not why we're doing this. You didn't respect boundaries. And we're going to protect our sheep because we have compassion for our sheep. And we're going to protect our sheep. My sister and her husband protect our sheep because that's their income. We protect our sheep because they are people that God has given to us to minister to. And we need to take that responsibility extremely seriously. And so those of you that, as children's workers, I'm sure you'll do something like this here. All of our workers go through a background check. That's mandatory. You can't work in our children's ministry if you don't go through that. Because we want to make sure we're doing our best to protect our sheep. And it all goes back to this word, compassion, and that they are our treasure. And we're going to do everything we can, not just to minister to them, but to protect them. So let's go on here. A teacher with heart must be, and I'm going to say this and then it'll require explanation. The teacher must be the center or core of the classroom. Now, I understand what you're teaching is about God. I know that God needs to be the center of everything we're doing, and everything we're teaching is about the Bible. But what I'm trying to help you understand is it doesn't need to be like this. It's not that you're authority just looking down at the kids, but it also shouldn't be this, okay? And sometimes kids can run our classroom, not because they're trying to be a bully, but if we're not careful, they can run the classroom. Somebody tell me, how can a child run your classroom? How is that possible?
Constantly asking questions and interrupting.
Exactly. Constantly asking questions. Sometimes they have nothing to do with anything that you're talking about. And so they're just like little squirrels. They're just wind up chasing this one and chasing this one and chasing this one. Very good. A lot of questions, okay? Answer the questions if they're relevant. Or say, hey, we're going to come back to that. Or we can talk about it after class. And when somebody continues to do that, we used that phrase last night. We always praise publicly, rebuke privately, okay? So maybe after class, hey, buddy, I appreciate all your questions, but maybe let's limit it to 3 questions per class or something like that so that you don't monopolize everybody's time, because I have some other things that I'm trying to get through here. What's another way that a child can take over the class if we're not careful? You're all teachers. Misbehavior, very good, okay? And not just always talk, not just the fact that they're talking, but even some of their actions that they could be doing. And they're just kind of taking over everything that's going on, right? And so that's what I mean. You have to keep in control of that classroom. There should never be a doubt about that. And then that authority needs to be set from the time class starts. And the only way you can do that is you're in that class when the kids start coming in. That's the importance of making sure that we're on time. Because if you walk in 5 minutes late and they're already having a wrestling match, that's not their fault that they did something. you as a teacher were late. And I know sometimes things happen. But yesterday I was trying to get here. My goal was to be here at 4 o'clock yesterday. And I'd been watching traffic patterns through the week. It's okay, it looks like I can probably be there, in 30 or 40 minutes. No, not on a Friday afternoon. It didn't happen. Then got down here and got tied up in all the school traffic and everything else, and I think it was about 15 minutes later getting here than what I planned to get here because of that. So sometimes we can plan to get there and things happen, but sometimes people just don't work as hard to plan to be there as we need to. And so we need to understand we want to take advantage of every bit of that to make sure that we're ready to go and ready to get going with them. And so there's all kinds of selfish things that kids can do to sometimes take over that. Okay? So B, we need to have understanding. We need to have understanding of this. We need understanding that many of our kids have low self-esteem or self-worth. And I know many times we think about these words as just sometimes terms just, well, that's a bunch of rubbish, okay? But I want you to think of it as self-respect. And you say, do you have scripture for that? I think this backs it up. Many of you remember in Mark chapter 7, one describes it asks Jesus, what is the most important? Everything you've taught us, what is the most important thing? And Jesus answered him, the first of the commandments is, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord, and thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind, and with all thy strength. This is the first commandment. But then, and the second is like, namely this, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. There is none other commandment greater than these. You say, Kerby, how can you say that why are you so strong about this idea of self-respect and self-worth? Because I think this teaches that our kids can't love others until they have some love for themselves. Now, we all know people have way too much love for themselves. We all know that, okay? And we're not talking about that extreme. But understanding of respecting themselves. Especially with the generation that you're teaching right now, they're taught not to respect themselves. And so many feel like that there's some kind of mistake, and many of them are wondering about all these things. And we could get really political at this time about all the gender situations and all the confusion that is there. This needs to be a place when they come here, they need to know that this is solid. And they need to understand that this book is truth. They need to understand what impact that the God who created them and the God who wrote this book, and that this God has a very special plan for their life. And whenever they can understand that, they can realize, whoa, God does really love me. I am valuable to God. I am special to God. And when they can understand that, then according to what Jesus said, that helps them to love others. Many times in bus ministry, many of our kids that come in, we usually have about 200 kids a week that come on our buses. And many of them come from inner city apartment complexes. And many of those kids are never taught how to respect property because they're never in one place very long. So many of them are so transient. They may be in 3 different apartment complexes in the course of 1 year. And so they don't know what it's like to take care of things. They don't know what it's like to do things because they've never been taught those kind of values. And so we have that opportunity when we're working with them and teaching them how to not only respect themselves, but to respect other things around them, respecting God's property, respecting their homes. Some of them have just never had that type of training. And so we need to have understanding of students with low self-esteem and self-worth, have understanding of things going on in or outside of the classroom. How are you truly going to, whenever your pastor prays about what he is supposed to teach from this book, he's asking God to guide him. But he's also, as he spends time with you as a shepherd with his sheep, he's trying to learn, hey, where are our people? I've seen on social media the last several days so many pastor friends that are praying about what they're going to preach this Sunday because they know their sheep are burdened. They know their sheep are hurting about what has happened over this week between 9/11 and all the other news that has taken place. And so they're concerned about that because they understand their sheep. We need to know our sheep. You say, Pastor Kerby, I teach 6-year-olds, how big a burden they have. Our daughter went through a divorce 2 years ago. The whole process started 3 years ago. I've never gone through anything like that before. Our little grandson was 5 years old when this started. I would have never chosen that for him. This has made such a huge impact on my ministry to see what single moms go through, to see what kids go through in the process of this, and the hurt that they go through. And we just think they're 5, they'll be okay. No. The divorce is done. That's over. His hurt is not done. His dad lives in Ohio and he's here. That's not cool. That's not what any boy wants. Certainly not what a grandpa wants for his grandson. We need to understand you probably have kids going through things like this in your class. You need to make sure that you're getting to understand that. We're just on one point here, okay? We're 40 minutes into class. We're going to have to speed up. But I want you to understand what I'm talking about. Again, we can talk about all the tools, but the tools are only helpful to us when we understand who we're dealing with and some things that can take place. You say, how am I going to get to know these kids? How am I going to know these things about them? I just have them for an hour on Sunday morning. Look for opportunities to spend time with them. And then when you have time with them, look for opportunities to talk to them. I realize if you're teaching 6-year-olds, these conversations may not get this deep, but some of you are teaching older kids. So when you have opportunities to talk to them, whether at church or at events or whatever, if your church goes to camp, I would encourage you, if you're a teacher, I would encourage you to see if you can possibly go to camp with the kids. 5 days with them, you're going to learn a lot about them. Taking kids on activities, you learn a lot about them. Okay, and just by being around them. But you say, I'm really not sure how to start a conversation with a child. Here's some points somebody taught me years ago. We're going to give you another acrostic here. Family. You start just talking to them about their family. We can talk to them about their interests. We can talk to them about their parents' occupation. We can talk to them about their religious background, because when we get to that and find out maybe they just started coming to church, you don't know where they went to church before. We have a lot of a large Hispanic population in our area, and so many of them were in Catholic churches, and so they have some different ideas about all of that. And so that is going to help us to get to where we really want to get with them and get to the message of Christ. So form or firm, depending on which way you look at that acrostic. But all these things are things that these kind of conversations that we can have as we talk to them. I want to tell you about a girl that came to our camp 3 years ago. And this girl was able to come on a camp scholarship. And so she had never been to our church and has never been back. She was a friend of a friend. And she lived outside of our area, was in the area for the summer. So she came for that week of camp. That week, I preached the evening services. Different staff member preached the morning services. And but the whole week had been about family, and realizing it's usually about 60% of the kids that go to our camp are from our bus ministry, and just by observing our kids through the years, I talked to the pastor about it. I said, these kids have no clue what a real family is supposed to be, how God intended the home to be, because they don't see it in their homes. And there's no television programs teaching a good family. I don't think we have a good family situation since Little House on the Prairie, okay? And just in so many of the television shows, the dad is just made out to be an idiot and a jerk, for lack of a better term. And they've never seen this modeled. And so in the morning services, we were interviewing different families that were there as counselors, and talking about how family life is. And then I'm preaching about family in the evenings. On Thursday night, about 10 or 15 minutes into my message, there was this girl that was there. Her name was literally Unique. That was her name, Unique. She was very tall. She was about the tallest girl in camp. She was the oldest girl in the camp, and thin as a rail. And about 10 minutes into it, she ran out the back door. And the chapel is on the second floor of a building. And the year before, a girl tried to jump over the rail to commit suicide, and I grabbed her by her feet as she headed over the rail. And so immediately I thought, she's going to jump over the rail. And she stopped, and the counselor is out there. And so the whole time I'm preaching, she's out here, and I can see from behind the pulpit, I could see this conversation going. And I mean, her hands are going everywhere, and I could tell she is fired up about something. And I'm trying to preach and wonder, what did I just say that set this off? I finished preaching. Thursday night we have our award ceremony. So, I mean, we were there for about an hour and a half. And she's out there on the porch this whole time with three of our lady counselors. So everything is done and the awards are done. So I go see what's going on. So I went out there and was like, what's happening? She had been so fired up talking. She is just, our camp is down by Huntsville, down by Houston. So we're out in the middle of Sam Houston Forest. It's very humid. And she's just covered in sweat. She's so wound up. Until she's been crying. And I said, what happened? And this girl that had not done anything up to that time, really draw any attention to herself. I mean, she jumped up and she got in my case. You want to know what's wrong? All week long, all you've done is talk about family. You've told us about how we're supposed to honor our family. You challenged us that when we get off the bus, when we get back to church tomorrow night, to go and to greet our family and give them a hug and thank our mom and thank our dad for allowing us to come to camp. You've been telling us about the difference between honor and respect. You've taught all of this. How am I supposed to honor my family? And I said, I'm sorry, I don't know your family. Do you live with your parents? You want to know about my family? Okay, when we drove down 45, Interstate 45, when we got off the exit here in Huntsville, did you see that prison? That's where my daddy is. She said, you talked about talking to our parents and hugging our parents. I said, Pastor Kerby, I've only met my dad one time. The closest I've ever came to touching my dad is I got to sit on one side and there was a glass between us and we put our hands up together and there was about an inch between, the best I remember probably. That's the closest I've ever come to touching my dad. She said, I'm 12 years old. She said, my daddy will not get out of prison until I'm 18. He's been in there since before I was born. Said, nobody in the family will tell me what he did. She said, I'm not stupid, Pastor Kerby. I can imagine what he must have done to be in prison for this long. And you want me to respect him? I don't know what I'm going to do when he gets out. I can't decide if I even want to see him. But you're telling me I'm supposed to honor him, and I'm supposed to obey him, and I'm supposed to respect him. How am I supposed to do that? Because he has not done everything else that you've been teaching. She was not come from a Christian home. And she said, I've heard, she said some very kind things. I've heard things that I didn't know, but I don't know what to do with this. I could have said in there one more sermon. I was done. So I tried to change the subject. We tell our counselors, try to de-escalate the situation. So I'm going to de-escalate the situation. Well, tell me about who do you live with? I live with my mom. I said, well, tell me about your mom. Oh, you don't know about my mom? Let me tell you about my mom. There's no children in the room. She said, I will tell you. She said, I'm here not because I wanted to be here. My mom found out that y'all were offering free scholarships to come to camp. She signed me up to come. I did not want to come. She said, I came with my friend, but I didn't want to come. My mom signed me up. She looked at me, a 12-year-old girl looks at me straight in the eye. She said, I will tell you, she said, I'll guarantee you that my mama has had a different man in our apartment every night this week. And you want me to respect her? On Sunday after camp is over with, we always have we call it Camp Sunday. And so many kids that have either got saved at camp or that have got saved during VBS, which is about a month before that, get baptized in. And we usually have several dozen kids that are getting baptized that Sunday. And we invite the parents to come that Sunday and see this. And she said, I think Mama's going to come Sunday. Do you want to meet her? I said, I'd like to meet her. Okay. So she sees me on Sunday. She says, Mama's here. You want to come meet her? Yeah, I'd like to meet her. So she takes me in, and her mom is sitting inside. She's sitting in a seat here, about like this, probably every bit of 350 pounds. She was wearing a dress. It was a halter top dress. There was not near enough material on that dress. We'll leave it there, okay? Every bit of her skin that I could see exposed was tattooed. Probably had at least 20 piercings. So she literally walked me up and she said, there's my mama. And she just kind of looked at me like, what's she going to do now? Why am I telling you this story? Because at that camp, I learned something about that young lady. I may never see her again until we get to heaven. But she made an impact on my life. Because it reminded me that we don't know what these kids are going through. And if those counselors hadn't taken time to have that conversation with her out there on that deck, we wouldn't have known what she'd go through. But those 3 counselors, she made a huge impact on them. To realize that sometimes when we can get frustrated, this is what, if you were a teacher at our church and you came to me and say, hey, I'm having a problem with Bubba, my question is going to be, have you ever talked to his parents? And so whether they're drive-in or whether they come into the bus ministry, have you talked to them? What do you know about Bubba? What do you know about Bubba and his family? And if they've never done that, I say, okay, I want you to have that conversation and then come back to me. I've never had a teacher have a conversation with a parent that doesn't change their whole outlook on Bubba. It may not be that drastic as what Unique went through. This is the most unique situation that I've ever faced. But how horrible that is. But if you just get to know these kids a little bit better and realize the things that they're dealing with, okay, I can handle this in class. Again, they can't distract the whole class. They can't monopolize the class. They can't take over the class. But if I can understand that, that's probably going to help me be a little bit more patient with them and a little bit more understanding. Which, by the way, then Unique looked and she said, so right beside Mama, who was hanging out both sides of a big chair, and that's her boyfriend. He may have weighed 110 pounds. And she said, that's my mama's boyfriend. And then she said, today. And that was the last conversation I've ever had with Unique. Why am I telling you this? I'm hoping you're understanding that you may not understand everything that's going on in that classroom. And that child in there is representing that family. So we're still on H, and we still have an hour to go, so let's roll, okay? Have spirit. Be prepared for class. We talked about this a lot last night, the importance of being on time and being prepared for what you're getting ready to go through. We talked about last night the importance, show excitement. We spent some time there last night. So then have compassion. Be aware of the student needs. Attempt to correct wrongs and to mend hurt feelings. So what are you supposed to do whenever a child just starts dumping the truck about home? Again, there are some things that have to be reported, and y'all can maybe have some other training about that and learn what you need to report to the pastoral staff and how that needs to be reported to child services and things like that. But as they're talking, here's something you have to make sure you remember. When a child really begins to open up and talk to you, many times a child will say something like many of us said at some point when we were a child, and maybe even as an adult, sometimes we still say this. If I talk to you, will you promise me that you will not tell anybody? What is your answer to that question every time, class? No, I can't promise you that. What you can say is, Ryan, this is what I'm going to promise you. I promise you I'm going to listen to you. I promise you that what you tell me is not going to be a conversation I'm just casually going to have with somebody. But there may be something that you're getting ready to tell me that is going to impact your safety, that your parents are going to need to know about, or another authority is going to need to know about. But I promise you that if I have to go to somebody, I will let you know. And if you want me to be in a conversation, to go talk to you with mom and dad, or to go talk to you with another teacher, or something that happened at school or whatever, I promised I will do that, but I cannot promise that I'm not going to tell anybody. Why do we want to have that conversation? Because we don't want to break their confidentiality. Okay? So make sure you explain that very clearly. So let's understand the importance, and that this first 5 minutes of class, we talked about the importance of being there on time to greet them, but then how that gets started. I can tell a big difference whether it be something like this starting, or whether I'm preaching that first 5 minutes, the connection that is made. You may not be able to memorize your whole lesson without notes. I could never go through a lesson without my notes. But I definitely want to go the first 3 to 5 minutes without looking down at my notes. Surely I can remember what I'm going to talk about the first 5 minutes, right? Because you're making that connection. You're making that connection through that eye contact that we talked about last night, and the importance of that. Okay? So that first 5 minutes is so important. And that's really true with adults. I mean, they tell us that many adults make a decision whether they're ever going to come back to this church before they ever even walk in those doors there. Some of them have already made the decision before they even get in the outside doors, maybe from an experience in the parking lot. But then they come in, who's going to greet them out there, and what's going to happen there at the Welcome Center, and what's going to happen in here. So many times before he ever gets in the pulpit, somebody's already made a decision whether or not they're going to come back. But that's true in your classroom as well, whether a child is going to want to be back in your classroom again. So understand the importance of that. E, have humility, or you could put a servant's heart. Even though you are that authority in the classroom, you're not there to be Mr. Commander, okay? You're not the drill sergeant, all right? So class is over with, and we ask our teachers that as a class they pick things up and leave it the way they found it, leave it the way they would want to find it. And so rather than telling your kids, hey, straighten up these chairs here, you go and you ask them, hey, could you help me straighten up the chairs here? We messed up the chairs here a little bit. We dropped some cookie crumbs on the floor here. Can somebody grab the vacuum and let's work together with it? Let's work together to do it. You're showing that servant spirit. So you need to model that. If you want them to be a servant, then you model that for them. I'm thankful to have a pastor that I see doing that so many times. And so many times I've seen him walking across the parking lot, and I'll see him diverted somewhere like, where's he going? And he'll go over and he's seen a piece of trash, and he goes over and picks it up, or he sees a weed in a flower bed, and he just picks it up. There are other people paid to do that, but just out of his servant's heart, he sees it out there, and it doesn't make the property look nice. Let's pick that up and take care of it. I've seen something this weekend I've never seen in a church ever. I've never seen a pastor work nursery and take care of the kids while you are in here doing this. That's a servant's heart. He's modeling that. And that's what we need to do in our classroom, make sure we're modeling that servant's heart and that humility. I think we can see that modeled in our Savior. Is that correct? So to capture a student's heart, a teacher must have heart. And E, show expression. Expression is shown with their eyes, just a look or a glance. A lot can be done with our eyes, can't they? Our mothers knew how to do that, didn't they? Our daddies knew how to do that. We could tell whether mom was upset or dad was upset just by the look that they were giving us. And so as you're teaching, as you're walking around in the classroom, as you're moving around, there's a lot of ways to use your eyes, not just to keep that attention, but just going up. And so you're coming by and you can see that this guy is not taking notes. He's writing notes to his girlfriend there beside him, okay? Or he's doodling, he's drawing pictures or whatever. I don't have to say, hey, put that down. What happens when I do that? The whole class, that guy's a jerk. Again, we have publicly rebuked, and we learn we don't do that. And so instead, just as I'm walking around, I just look down, I just pat him on the shoulder, and I just kind of look at him and go like this. He knows he's busted. I don't have to say a thing. Now, if he has any humility at all, he'll say, I'm busted, I need to put this away. Now, if he keeps doing this, then we talked about last night, is seating the workers among children. So let's say there's a worker right back here. I'm just going to look at her and look down. And so she knows, hey, I'm telling her, I want you to keep an eye on this. This needs to stop. I'm not going to interrupt everything that I'm teaching and lose everybody else's attention to take care of this. I'm going to let somebody else take care of this. And so the workers are trained. Hey, you watch. I tell them, watch me. I should never have to stop what I'm doing to take care of a discipline situation. And that's what you work with those that work with you to understand and read one another. and to help one another as a team so you never have to do that. So the eyes, we understand the importance of that. We're finally going to go to page 2, folks. All right, so page 2 at the top. Ears, have ears to hear. Listen to both sides of the story, both the students or the child and the parent. Listen what they say and what they don't say. That day when I met Unique's mom, I had the opportunity to stand there and I just started asking her some questions, and it was very clear right away that Unique was not exaggerating the story. Okay? And so sometimes whenever you hear things like this with kids, and whether it's between a child and another child or about a child and a parent, then try to get together and listen to both sides of the story. Listen to their conversations with other students. I didn't say spy on them, but just spending time with them. And again, things like camp and various activities are a great time to be able to do something like that. So here's another E word for you. It takes effort. It takes effort. Okay, so we're going to learn to, we understand it's not easy. It takes time to do these things. Next word, encourage. The word encourage means to give support or to help lift up. Remind each student that she or he was created by God and God makes no mistakes. Remind them of passages like Psalm 139:14. Let's read this one together. I will praise thee, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are thy works. Every child in your class is fearfully and wonderfully made. They may question, they may wish they had different color hair, they may wish they were taller, they may wish they were shorter, they may wish they were thinner, whatever it may be. But God looks at them and says, you're marvelous. You're fearfully and wonderfully made. And you make sure that your kids understand that. And sometimes those private conversations with them can be a huge, huge encouragement to them. C, show unconditional love to everyone. It doesn't matter what kind of car mom and dad drove into church. It doesn't matter whether the child in your class, their parents are friends of yours, or whether maybe y'all don't get along so well. But we need to love each one of them. Remember, we're looking to show that compassion and to make that difference. Praise your good kids. Too many times the bad kids get all the attention. And we wind up just trying to do the whole class. It's like, oh no, I hope he doesn't do this, or she doesn't do this today, and you just go through, And we don't give any attention to the kid that is there every single week, that never misses, that memorizes every memory verse, and that can answer every question. We've seen this model so much. Ryan, do you remember Diane Woody? Mrs. Woody was Hannah's 5-year-old teacher. Oh, I'm sorry, not 5 years. She was in 2nd grade going there. So I guess it would have been, I think at that time, it would have been her 3rd grade teacher in Sunday school. She was? Okay. And Mrs. Woody is a godly, godly lady. And whenever we would leave to come back to Texas on vacation or out doing something else, there's probably at least 3 or 4 different times. There are numbers of things that she would do. But I remember at least 3 or 4 times that we got home and we pulled up and her whole front door was decorated. Welcome home. You know what she's doing? She was showing some attention to her good kid. Nobody ever did that for Zach because he wasn't the good one. That's our son. I'm kidding. But guess who is very near and dear to Hannah still to this day? Hannah went to Ohio this summer, and one of the people that she wanted to spend time with was Mrs. Woody because of the impact that she has. Every birthday, since she was in 3rd grade, and she's now 33 years old, she's always had Mrs. Woody makes these homemade cards. And I'm talking about the kind that I would make, just with scissors or whatever. All these dimensions some of you ladies have done, maybe know what I'm talking about. I mean, it's a piece of art that she makes for her, still to this day. Praise your good kids. So don't think, well, I don't ever get any attention because I follow the rules and nobody pays any attention to me. So that's why some kids do what they do, is they're going to get attention one way or another. Ask the Lord to teach you new ways to encourage your students. So let's go on to our next letter. So now we're going to talk about the right attitude is our next word. An attitude of concern. See the child as God does. See the child as God sees each individual child. The Bible says this in Mark chapter 10, suffer little children to come unto me and forbid them not, for of such is the kingdom of heaven. That word suffer means allow. And Jesus wanted the children to come to him. And we need to make sure that, because he was concerned for them, we need to make sure that we're concerned for them. Seek to help the students with problems he is facing. There was whenever I first got to, I talked about moving to Louisiana while I was in the Air Force. That first church that I went to, that's where Virginia and I got married. And then eventually we moved out to the church where she grew up in, called Marywood's Baptist Church, which that's where Randy went to church. So I've known Randy a long time. Randy has a twin sister named Renee. Renee was the maid of honor in our wedding. I don't know if you knew that or not. And so I've known Randy and Renee a long time. Their family was like a second home to my wife. My wife came from a very dysfunctional family, and that was her safe house. Brother Posey drove a bus, or didn't drive, but he was a bus captain on a bus route for I think 40-something years. And he died just a couple of years ago, and we were able to go to Shreveport to his funeral. There was a family that he reached on his bus route. Their last name was Jordan. And the pastor there, again, so I'm this young guy who's only been a Christian for a few years. My wife, Virginia, the pastor there at that time was the youth pastor when Virginia started going to church there. And so they were very close. And so he watched me very closely because he wanted to make sure I was taking care of her. And then two, he took a lot of responsibility. He was excited I was going into ministry and he was investing in me. He asked me to do something that I've never understood, though, because I would never do this to somebody who's just starting to teach. He asked me to teach junior high boys. That's a tough crowd for anybody. Probably the toughest class I've really ever taught to this day, really. But we had a great time. I don't know if I taught them anything because I didn't know much myself. But we had a great time, and we did a lot of activities together. I love to camp, still do, and so we went camping a lot. The Jordans had a little boy named David who was in 7th grade. And David improved my prayer life. Lord, please help David just to stay home today. It would probably it'd be good for David if he just stayed home, you know. David drove me nuts. He had no interest in anything about Jesus. He would go camping. He loved camping. And so we had a good relationship because I taught him how to fish and we had some great times together. But when he came to class, he would come in each week and he would come. I've already messed this row up, so I'll stick with this row. He'd come in, sit down in his seat, and lean back like this against the wall. I'd say, David, put your chair down. And about 10 minutes later, he'd be back like this. So I just finally give up. Wall's already messed up. Can't be hurt any worse. Not going to let him distract the whole class. But he would come. He didn't have a choice. So they reached through the bus ministry, but at this point, they're driving in. So my responsibility besides teaching this junior high boys class is I ran the PA system. It wasn't near as fancy probably as y'all's systems. It was a very small little board, a smaller church. And so on Wednesday night, so I'm running the soundboard, and the pastor comes out on stage like here. There was doors coming in, so he came in a door like that. And as soon as he came out, I saw the expression on his face. I thought, something is wrong. And so he comes out and he sits down. Song leader leads a song, and I can just tell he just looks like he's holding everything back just to keep from breaking into tears. He comes up to the pulpit, and by that time he is crying, and he says, we need to pray as a church. He said, many of you know the Jordan family, and this afternoon David was walking home from school, and the Red River comes through Shreveport, and David has always been told to stay away from the river, and they lived close to the river, and he and some friends decided to go play down by the river, and they got to throwing rocks at one another, and they got to wrestling around, and they wound up stepping out into the water, and then they got going deeper in the water, and David got caught by the current, and he said, David's missing, we don't know where he is, but this was several hours ago, and it doesn't look good. And so we prayed. I have no clue what happened the rest of that service. because my mind was in our Sunday school room. I was thinking about that chair. So the service is over with, and there we had choir practice on Wednesday night after church. And so church was dismissed. The choir gets up there, and so the choir special on Sunday. Trying to think of the name of the song, I'm going blank on it. It is well. What are the first words to it is well? When peace like a river. And so when the choir said, when peace like a river, I was done. I left the sound booth. I don't know what happened in there after that. I went to the sound booth. I didn't walk, I ran. Virginia was in the choir. She didn't know what was going on. I ran back to her Sunday school room. I ran back there, and I knelt to this chair. Guys, I hope you don't leave thinking, I don't know why that old man brought us here to tell us the life and times of Kerby Richmon. I hope you understand the purpose of my stories that I'm telling you. But I knelt at that chair, weeping, and asked God to never, I apologized to him for giving up on David. Maybe David's in heaven, because at the end of the service, by that time, the police had come in and given a report, and found one of the ushers, and gave a report that they'd found him, and he had passed away. I apologized to the Lord that I'd given up on David. And I asked the Lord, Lord, help me to never give up on somebody again. I came close on Ryan a few times. I'm kidding. Lord, help me to never give up on somebody. I'd given up on him. And he may, as far as I know, he never accepted Christ. Maybe he did and I didn't know it. We'll find out one day. Lord, help me never to give up on somebody again. David Jordan had a huge impact on my ministry. And if we could not wait for somebody like a David Jordan, or not wait for somebody like unique, but just to realize that we are all unique. And that every child in our class has a unique set of circumstances, and be understanding of those, whatever they may be. Ryan, if there's some tissue somewhere, I sure would be thankful, and y'all probably would too if you know where some is. So we're down towards the bottom, being added, don't give up. Oh, you're still looking, okay. If the student is not saved, seek to witness to him. Obviously, David, I was like, I know, Lord, I know I did my best. I knew this. I knew I'd done my best to talk to him about Jesus. And for that, Lord gave me some great comfort. But I'm thankful that I did that. We need to all keep that in mind. What are we doing to get to them? Thank you, sir. Secondly, B, an attitude of prayer. Pray for each student by name, and then keep notes about the kids. If you'll look, you're on page 2 of your notes. If you go back to pages 5 and 6, you're going to find a form that I put in there like this. It's called Getting to Know My Class. And so it's done front to back. And so this was designed to help you keep up with your class. You can put a picture up here about them, a place you can put information, the obvious. What is this part about? This is where I want to challenge you ways to keep up with your class. So let's say if your church promotes in August or whatever it is, so this little boy named Jack, okay? So Jack comes to your class, and so you have this information about him here, and then you're going to have a goal to make 2 contacts with Jack each month. I'm not saying go to his house. His parents are going to kick you off the porch, okay, if you show up there twice a month. But you're going to make 2 contacts of some kind. And then, so let's say on August 5th, that you call the house or call the mom and say, hey, can I talk to Jack for just a little bit, okay? Or you send the parents a text about something going on in your class. Hey, would you let Jack know tomorrow we're going to be doing this or whatever. So it's just some contact. Sending them a note. We talked about how important those cards were to our kids, getting things in the mail. Most of us don't even get regular mail in the mail anymore, okay? But especially to a child, to get something in the mail means the world to them, okay? Maybe sending an email to the class, okay? And so you can put an E there. So your type of visit. So on August 5th, I send an email to them, or again, and then maybe twice a year making some kind of visit to them. At least once a year, try to get to their home if possible. But again, I don't know about what your area is. Our area, if you show up at somebody's house unannounced, it usually doesn't go over well. So make an appointment if possible so they know that you're coming. It'll probably go better. And then P, this personal time. That doesn't mean maybe one-on-one time with them, but maybe so you're doing something as a class that you're spending some personal time with them. Does that make sense? And you've had that conversation with them. And so throughout the year, you just have the time to see, hey, how much contact have I had with Jack to get to know Jack throughout this year? And then different times that you have time with them, whether it be those phone calls, whether it be time in the classroom or whatever, you're trying to learn things about their families. There's a place at the top here, the information about their family, their siblings, things like that, who lives there, who doesn't live there, things about their church background, things about where they go to school, their favorite subjects. Why would you have all this? Because this helps you to know how to get a conversation going. And then maybe when special times come about, like a birthday or something like that, or Christmas time, you think, I don't know what to give them. Well, if you look down here, here's some personal things down here. It has here their favorite sport, their favorite food, their favorite TV show. You have snacks, their favorite candy, all kinds of things down there. And just learning different things. So questions that you can ask. And so I'm just trying to give you some ideas of things to help you get to know this little boy named Jack in your class. And then to be able to remember it. And then you notice down here under personal, there's a place down here, any special prayer requests. So now you put together a little notebook. You have a little 3-ring binder going, just like what I have a binder here, and you keep them in there. And then as you pray for your class, you're just turning through there. And you can not only pray for Jack, but you can pray for his parents. His mom has been really mean to him lately, so pray for Jack, okay? But so just little things like that. And you can pray for the whole family and maybe pray for their school, whatever. So hopefully maybe that'll be a help to you, okay? All right, let's keep going here. We're talking about attitudes, an attitude of expectancy. Expect children to behave. Don't just think they're going to. Don't just say, okay, they're going to do this and I just have to deal with it. No, expect them to behave. Don't shame them when they don't say, oh, I'm so disappointed in you. No, just expect them to behave. And we're learning how to be proactive to keep these things from happening. Set some rules. You don't have to have the 10 Commandments in your classroom, okay? But just some basic rules. Over here last night, we talked about them a little bit. Hands in your lap, sit up straight, no talking, and don't leave unless it's an emergency. So have some rules so they're not coming and going all the time because you don't know what's going on when they're coming and going. So try to keep them around there. So keep things going like that. Expect God's blessings on your class. We're talking about having an attitude of expectancy. Number 3 on the next page, expect the unexpected. Learn to laugh at yourself when appropriate. How many of you get Bible character names mixed up sometimes? I don't know why. I get Jonah and Noah mixed up all the time, okay? And sometimes we're just like, what? What do you mean? One of the guys on our pastoral staff is from Mexico, and his first name is Moises. He has messed me up so bad. I called him Moses, and I call Moses Moises all the time now. So he messes me up. You know, sometimes you have to just learn to laugh at yourself instead of try to cover it up. And, you know, it can be embarrassing. Just Wednesday night, one of our young ladies that helps in our program, her name is Ruby. And I looked at her and called her Faith, and she just went like this, oh, Grace. And she looked at me. I was Ruby was the last thing I would have thought about, you know, and I apologized to her after class. I'm so sorry. Sometimes we just make mistakes, right? So don't just go with it instead of trying to cover it up as if you never make any kind of mistake. So understand that. Follow the 3 F's, okay? Be fair, be firm, and be friendly. That's always a good thing to do, okay? Let's continue on. We're working on our acrostic. We've talked about the H-E-A. Now we have R. R stands for respect. Respect for the teacher must be earned, not just assumed. Before all of us were adults, we were all what at one time? We were all kids. And then we got to be teenagers. And then we got to be an adult. I'm confident most of us in the room have a job. Is it, or maybe you want to have a job, or maybe someday you're going to have a job, right? on that job, what happens when you start, you're on a job and you've been there for 15 years, and you get somebody new that comes in and you're introduced to this person as your boss. And they've never been to the company before. And you've been there for 15 years. What is your first reaction? What? They didn't earn it. Okay? So there's charts about levels of leadership, but this assigned leadership is the lowest level of leadership that there is. In the Air Force, and even if you were never in the military and you've watched TV shows or movies or whatever, you've seen this demonstrated. The lowest level of an officer in most of the branches is referred to as a lieutenant. And so this lieutenant comes in and he's 25 years old. He comes in with a little gold bar on his shoulder and goes up to a guy that's been in there for 30 years, has a whole armful of stripes, and this guy has to salute this guy. And it's very hard sometimes for this guy to salute this guy, because he's earned his 8 stripes. I just got my gold bar because I finished college. I haven't earned it. I haven't earned that respect. But this guy still has to salute this guy. You understand what I'm saying? It's hard to do. And that's one of the very awkward things that goes on in the military because of that type of leadership that goes on. We had a captain in our squadron at Nellis Air Force Base that had been enlisted, and then he finished college and went through officers' school. And so he was only a captain, but he had been in the military for like 20 years. There were colonels that respected that captain because he had earned those bars. He had earned his stripes. When you're a teacher and you step in the classroom, just because you're the teacher in the classroom, that doesn't mean they're going to respect you right away. And you have to understand that. You're going to have to earn that respect. And just by having a bunch of rules up on the board, that's not going to do it either. But when they see that you show in that first word we talked about, and of some have what? Compassion, that's going to earn that respect very quickly. Okay? And whenever they see you having that balance between the authority that they know that you have as a teacher, but they're trying to figure you out. And all of us can remember being kids and testing that authority in that classroom. Is that right? Can you think back to that far? Okay? And yet many of us have also done it on the job situation with a boss. So understand that and understand that it may take a while to earn that respect. And don't just think you're just going to get it right away just because somebody introduces you as a teacher. So what are some ways that you can do that? Number one, share with your class how God is working in your own life. What are you learning? What are you reading? What are you getting out of your devotions? What are your prayer requests? So you're going around the room and you're getting these prayer requests, all these things that are going on. Do you share a prayer request with them? And there may be some that are much too personal that you don't want to share with them, but make sure that you're sharing with them. You may be teaching a series in your Sunday school class about Moses. But I wonder what an impact it would have on your class. Say, hey guys, I realize we've been learning about Moses or however you're going to pronounce it. But I know we're doing this, but I want to share something with you this morning. And maybe you just, and again, this would be a great way to teach them this. Say, each day, I read a proverb a day from the book of Proverbs. And today's the 13th. And so this morning I read in Proverbs chapter 13. So before we talk about Moses, I want to share with you something the Lord reminded me of this morning. Because in Proverbs chapter 13, verse 3, the Bible says, "He that keepeth his mouth keepeth his life, but he that openeth wide his lips shall have destruction." Guys, what do you think that means? Let's talk about this verse for just a minute before we talk about Moses. What are you teaching your kids by doing that? Somebody tell me. Your chance. What are you teaching your kids? The what? Yeah. I'm telling you to read your Bible, but I'm reading my Bible too, and I'm sharing with you a conversation I had with God this morning about this. I need to watch my lips. I need to watch my mouth. And it doesn't have to be a whole sermon. It can be a whole sermon just about that. But don't get off track. But you're teaching them that, hey, my teacher is modeling what I'm supposed to do. You know why the Brogans had such an impact on me? I don't know they ever fussed at me about anything. I'm sure I aggravated the snot out of them many times and just think, oh, that kid, But I watched them model something. they modeled for me what our home is like today. Is I would see them pray together. They even taught their poodle to pray. Their poodle prayed before he ate. I mean, you know, they would pour food in the little thing, and Mickey was named. And Mickey would stand up on his back legs like this, and Dean would say, "Thank you for the food," and Mickey would eat. So you may say it's silly, but I just thought, this is just a funny thing. But to see how he cared for Nita. My parents had been married almost right at 49 years when they died. They both died the same year. And I'm very thankful for my parents. They were a wonderful family. But I wanted a different relationship with my wife than the way Dad talked to Mom. I never heard Dad say, "I love you" to Mom until she was on her deathbed. For a long time, I wondered, does Dad love her? And then I just, many of you have probably studied about love languages, realize, you know, words are not Dad's language. He's just not going to say this. He's shown his love by taking care of her and the things that he does. That's just not something he does. But that's not what I wanted for my family. But I never seen that until I watched the way Dean took care of Nita and the way Nita took care of him. I want to have a wife that would do that one day. And so in your classroom, model the behavior. Don't just teach them the facts out of the Bible. They can be really good at Bible B, but be really bad right here, right? And so as we're modeling these things and we're teaching them about this idea of respect, show some respect towards them and work together with that. So hopefully maybe that'll challenge you a little bit to think about that. Number 2, teach them to make decisions based upon the Bible. Some qualities they should respect about their teacher. Think about this, guys. So, number 1, obviously their teacher's saved, and talk about that occasionally. Willfully, cheerfully, and here's your blank, faithfully serving God. Somebody asks you to be in this role, we've talked about before. Hopefully it wasn't just to fill a hole somewhere, but they respected you and respected your walk with the Lord and asked you to serve. They respected your faithfulness. So Paul wrote this to Timothy. He said, "And I thank Christ Jesus our Lord, who hath enabled me, for that he counted me faithful, putting me into the ministry." I've seen a few people over the years that were asked to be in a particular role, and then once they got into that role, some of their faithfulness declined. They were asked to teach on Sunday morning, but they knew whenever they were asked to teach on Sunday morning in Sunday school, they signed a commitment to say, "Hey, I'll be faithful to all the services." And that means being there not just Sunday morning, but being there Sunday night and Wednesday night. And then all of a sudden, the pastor notices that somebody's not there on Wednesday night. Like, well, wait a minute, what happened? One time while I was in Ohio, we had a family in our church that helped on Wednesday night. And we're very faithful on Wednesday night, but I was noticing that they weren't there on Sunday morning. And one day, Pastor Dutcher asked me, he said, "Do you know what's happening with his family?" And I really don't. I said, I'll check with them. So I made an appointment, and me and somebody else went over there, and we got there, and she had told me, she said, it'll be close to dinner time, but I think she's making a soup or something. And she said, "I don't have to be in the kitchen. You know, we can meet with you." I wanted to talk to her and her husband. And so we get there, man, it smelled great. I think we're having soup today, aren't we? Is that true? We're having some kind of soup. That'll be good. We're going to eventually get there, I promise, okay? And we're planning on noon for that, right? Okay, I don't want to be late for lunch. But so, I mean, the house smelled great. And they were very kind when we got there. And we sit down in the living room, we started talking. And like, you know, is there something specifically we want to talk about? I said, yeah. I said, I really appreciate your faithfulness in Master Club and helping us with this. But I've missed you on Sunday morning lately. And I just want to come by and see if something was going on, because it seems like you're still there on Wednesday night for Master Club, but we're not seeing you on Sunday morning. What's happening? Everything changed really quick, okay? The things escalated quickly. And the husband is a pretty laid-back guy. She was not laid back. And she literally said, "How dare you come in my home and ask me where I was on Sunday morning?" And I said, "Ma'am," I said, "I'm not here to be a truant officer. I didn't know if something was wrong. I didn't know maybe some change with your job schedules. I didn't know what was going on. There's been a pattern of you not being here on Sunday night, but you're here on Wednesday night. We are there every Wednesday night, and you should be thankful for that." I said, "I am thankful." But I said, "You were asked to do this because you had been faithful in an area, and yet now you're not faithful in that area. And you understood, we had an agreement that you signed. I don't know if you did this, but we had an agreement you had to sign that if you're going to be a leader, that you have to be in these things. And I said, you signed that. I'm just asking if there's a problem that I can help you with. It's none of your business, Kerby. I said, okay, I can accept that. The timing could not have been any better, because within a few minutes of her saying it's none of your business, and I'm trying blah, 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 trying to figure out where I'm going to go with this conversation now, the phone rings. And it was her daughter. And right away I could tell basically what was happening. The daughter was calling to say that she wasn't going to be there for supper. And she lit into her daughter, a poor daughter. I probably caused her, already had her raised a little bit. And she lit into her. How dare you? I have made dinner for you, and you call in this late to tell us that you're not going to be here? I don't appreciate that. And blasted her pretty good for about 2 minutes, hung up the phone, and then turned back to me. I was like, everything okay? She said, yeah, I guess it's okay, but she's not going to be here for supper. And had a little idea. So you're upset because you prepared a nice meal for her and she didn't have the respect to let you know earlier that she wasn't going to be here? And she said, yeah. I said, that's kind of why I'm here. I said, every week our pastor spends a lot of time preparing a message, God's Word, from the bread of life to teach us, because he knows that we need preaching and that we need God's Word. And so I said, he asked me to come by and check with you because he missed you and we didn't know where you were. And I said, I'm not here to be a truant officer. I'm not here to fuss at you. I'm here to help you and find out if there's some way that we can help. And that didn't help her at all. She got mad and told me to leave the house. She said, not only are we not to be there Sunday, but she said, we're not going to be back on Wednesday night either. We're gone. We didn't see him for about 3 years. It had been at least 3 years, maybe a little bit more maybe, but somewhere around 3 years. One Sunday morning, I saw her and her husband walking in the church. I thought, oh boy, I didn't know where to run and hide. I wasn't sure what to do. And I thought, well, this is kind of awkward. I can't really do much else. And so I went up and said, hello. And he shook my hand. I reached out to shake her hand, and she reached out and hugged me. I was not expecting that. I was like, what happened? And she said, I'm so glad we saw you. She said, it's so easier for us to see you now than after she said, to go in the auditorium, knowing what our last conversation was. She said, we felt really bad about this. She said, I know our last conversation was really bad. And I said, it was a couple of years ago. I'm glad you're here. She said, no, I need to tell you something. She said, we have never forgotten what you told us. I think there'd been either 4 or 5 churches since then, members, not just visited, they'd been at different churches. She said, we have never found a pastor that had prepared a meal for us like our pastor does. I'm so thankful for our pastor. We've had this conversation several times. It was only out of pride that we haven't been back here. We're back, and we want to stay, and we wanted to apologize. What a cool story. But it all came, again, from reaching out to somebody to help them to understand, and to somebody that was once faithful, that their faithfulness had backed off. Now, don't be scared to death to talk to somebody about that because of that story, but understand that's why the importance of faithfulness is so important. And the kids see this. They wonder, where's my teacher? And with I've had situations before, it wasn't with this family, but with other kids, like, I was trying to find my teacher on Sunday, I can't find my teacher. That's not cool, is it? Because they're rather, hey, my teacher doesn't come to church anymore. That's not a good thing. So faithfulness is very important. Okay? So C, honesty. That's obvious. But honesty not just in telling the truth, but transparency. In Exodus chapter 18, Moses had a conversation with his father-in-law. What was his father-in-law's name? Anybody remember? Jethro. Hey, I've got a piece of candy for you, a little snack as we wait. Okay? An almond joy, okay? All right? So Moses, he's so excited. He's going to take his father-in-law and show him around, and you can just kind of picture Moses almost strutting his stuff, be excited. I can't wait for my father-in-law to see everything I'm doing. I'm the boss. Everybody looks up to me. And he's taking Moses around, and as Moses is taking Jethro around, he's showing him all these things. And Moses just expecting his father-in-law just to be proud as a peacock for him. But is that what Jethro says? Does anybody remember what Jethro says to him?
He says he's working too hard.
Yeah, he said, he says you're working too hard. He said, this thing you're doing is not good. Moses thought, man, I'm knocking it out of the park, man, every week. Look at me. Everybody wants to come and talk to me. I am an important dude. And I'm your son-in-law. Aren't you thankful to have a son-in-law like me, Jethro? And he just looked at him and he said, what you're doing is not good. You need to divide this up. I think Moses was very thankful later that his father-in-law was very honest with him and was very transparent with him. We need to be very honest with our students. We need to be very, very transparent with them. And sometimes just tell them, hey guys, I know we've been talking about reading your Bible and this, but I want you to know, and today I just gave you an example of a verse that I read this morning. But guys, I want you to know, there was a couple days this week, I'll just be very honest with you, I didn't get it done. I apologize. I wasn't the leader I needed to be. So let's have some accountability this week. Let's all, when we come back here next week, let's give an account to one another of did we read our Bible each day this week? Because I need that accountability as well. So you see what I'm talking about? That transparency, that honesty. That's what the kids are going to respect. Submission to authority. Now here's where we fail. I doubt if there's anybody in this room that would ever intentionally talk bad about Pastor Johnson. But sometimes if we're not careful, we can say things that are disrespectful. As children's workers, I've been a children's worker a long time, especially if you're on Sunday morning. I knew your pastor when he was a lot younger. I don't think he preaches as long now as he did when he was in his 20s and 30s, but he does, okay. But it's one thing for you to know that the pastor went overtime, but I've also heard leaders say before to a group of kids, I don't know when we're going to get out of here. I don't know when the pastor's going to stop talking. He knows he's overtime. I need to get home. Is that respectful or disrespectful? So we need to be careful about that. I think there's enough said about that. Okay? So respect for the student is essential to capturing the heart. So love them and accept them as individuals. Praise publicly, rebuke privately. We've talked about that. So to capture the student's heart, T is trust. That's our next word here. We're on our last page, so we're pretty much on schedule. Right up at the top then. So it's three T's. One is time. What are they looking for? They're looking for consistency. They're looking for confidentiality. We've already talked about that. And they're looking about caring. Does my teacher really care for me? I told you a minute ago about the importance of transparency and honesty. I've been at our church for 10 years. And I've known the pastor longer than that. We've been friends about, I think, almost 20 years. And I'd probably been there about a year. And one day I went in for a staff meeting. And he said, Kerby, I need to talk to you about something that I don't want to hurt your feelings, but I need you to know something about yourself that I don't think you realize. I was okay. What is it? He said, we're friends. I know how much you can help our ministry, but you're doing something that is not only not helping our ministry, but it's hurting you, and ultimately it's hurting me. Well, that really had my attention. What's wrong? He said, on Sunday mornings, you are so busy getting around this property. He said, there are some people that feel like you're rude. He said, I don't think you're rude. I know you. But he said, many of our people, the only time they see you on Sunday morning. And you're getting on such a rush to go from this side of campus to that side of campus, or this side of the building to that side of the building, or go from one place to another, that you're going by and somebody's saying, hey, and you're maybe shaking their hand. You're not blowing them off, but you're just keeping on going, and they want to talk to you. They just want to spend some time with you. This word caring. Kerby, you just need to slow down and have that conversation. Okay? So that doesn't mean, and he wasn't expecting me, and I'm not suggesting that you've got time to have a 20-minute conversation with every child in your class, but they need that time where you're looking at them eyeball to eyeball and engaging in a conversation, and you may know, I need to get to choir or whatever it may be, but they shouldn't feel that way. Does that make sense? He said, I just need you to work on that. That's something that we could probably all learn a little bit from. Because every one of you, and if you're in this room, then you're not only, it shows you're not only committed to be a volunteer, but you are trying to excel. You are trying to grow. And so you are committed. But sometimes in the midst of that commitment, we can be committed in several different areas and rushing around so much that people don't feel like they're making any kind of connections with you. And so make sure that we're slowing down enough to do that. And so we're talking about time there. So time, the next one is tenderness. Quote this verse with me, Ephesians 4:32. Be ye kind one to another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, even as God, for Christ's sake, hath forgiven you. Be ye kind one to another. And what was that next word? Start with a T? Tender-hearted. Okay? That's what's going to help with that respect as well. And so these are all things. A teacher must have all these things. So we're completing this word heart here. So tenderness, this next one, man, this is a tough one. Touch. A hug is not inappropriate, but keep it public. We had a parent this last year that came to me and reported a worker to me and just completely caught me off guard. This man had been a member of our church for a long time. And he told me, he said, this man was inappropriate with my daughter. I said, okay, what happened? And he explained what happened. He said he got too close to her. And I said, so why was he this close to her? And so she explained the situation. We have video cameras all over the place, like most people do now, but you can't get a camera in every place. But I said, where did this incident happen? And I knew, so when she told me where it happened, then I said, okay, I'm going to go back and look at the security footage and I'll get back with you. So I went and I found it, cut out the clip. I emailed it to her. I said, this is exactly what happened. And really what it was is they were in a room. There was a counter in the room. And so imagine a countertop back here. And the two of them were both behind the counter. And she's trying to help kids. Last night we talked about our Kids Buck store. We had prizes and things that they get. So they're both trying to help in there. He just went behind her in the Kids Buck store. He never touched her. I mean, literally he's walking behind her like this. It's on video. I said, it's clear. He never even touched her. She said, he was too close. I said, I don't know how they could have done differently. I said, I will change the policy. And so now there's a sign in there that two people shouldn't cross one another behind the counter in that area because it's too tight back there. But she was claiming something that there really wasn't anything there. Does that make sense? But we do have to be very careful about how we touch anymore. But she wouldn't stop there. She said, he shakes her hand every week. I said, yeah? She said, I don't like it. I said, what does he said, and I said, what do you mean? Does he do something? No, he just goes up. Said, adult men should not be shaking my teenage daughter's hand. And I said, I'm sorry, I'm not going to back you up there. I said, that's being kind. I said, he shook her hand. In fact, this man, he's older than I am, and he typically gives a fist bump to everybody. I said, we're going to have to agree to disagree there. If you don't want your daughter around him, then you can choose to do that. But I'm not going to scold a guy because he shakes her hand every week. And he basically greets the greeters, greets the teachers as they come in on Wednesday night and make sure they have their name tag on. I had an attorney several years ago. I don't know if you ever heard of David Gibbs. Do you ever do anything, David Gibbs? And so he had been at a conference at our church, and he had taught us that, and he had said this. He said, you should never hug a child. He said that. And it was in the context of what he was talking about and all the lawsuits that go on. He said the best thing you can do for your church is just to never hug a child. And so he left, and I'm just wondering, oh no. I can't imagine a children's ministry without hugging kids, okay? And I hope you don't think I'm a weirdo for that, but these kids need hugs. And so, like, they're so after, I know it was the next week, one of them in our church now, we're going to be going out and making some visits. And on the way over there, he's like, I need to know what we're supposed to do now. I said, about what? He said, you heard what Brother Gibbs said. We're not supposed to hug kids. He said, what are we supposed to do when kids come up to give us a hug? And I said, I don't know what to do either. I said, I think I'm going to call him. I will. I'll call him this week. No joke. We get to the first house. We get out of the van. We're walking up to the house. 3 kids come running out of the house. They come up running up to me to give us a hug. And they come and give us a hug like this. And we both just stand here. Hi. I ain't going to touch you. I love you, but I ain't going to touch you at all. I'm not going to jail for you. And that was just weird. We got back in later like, okay, we've got to do this. This is just odd. How is ministry going to be if we can't hug a kid? And so the next day I called their office and like, can you explain this? This is what Dr. Gibbs said. And I don't want to disrespect him, but is this really what y'all teach? And, she kind of laughed. Well, Dr. Gibbs, he exaggerates some things sometimes. No, Dr. Gibbs ever exaggerated a story? No, that would never happen. And so it was a lady. So she said basically, this is where you're safe. You're safe hugging a child, and it's best. Side hugs would be the best kind of hug, not straight on, okay? But anything you touch on a child from a shoulder up, an extension of a shoulder. So whether it be shaking hands, whether it be a fist bump, whether than tapping them here, tapping them on the back. See, he put his head down. He remembers, rubbing his head, because I'd always mess with the kids' heads. But I would even sometimes kids would come in and I'd go like this. I'd trip them and get them down on the floor, and maybe tickle them or whatever, just to mess with them, okay? Especially kids that I knew didn't have a dad in their life. And just to be rough with some of the boys, just need to learn to be rough, and I'd give them down. But I do everything. But she said, any extension of the arm and above. She said, this is what you don't do. You don't go below their shoulder blades. And she said, it's not just true with children, but you should always do that with anybody of the opposite gender as well. Okay? So, because when you start going below the shoulder blades, then that's where you're going to get accusations. The coach's pat? No. Okay? We don't do that at all, right?
Thank you.
Thank you, yeah. Okay? So that's where we are with touch. Does that make sense without being awkward? Okay? And so that was a huge relief to us, okay? Because okay, well that makes sense. That puts some parameters there, but still we can show that attention and we can show that kindness without just completely blowing them off and without feeling like we're perverted or something to do anything different. So there we get through our T's for touch, okay? So let's do this. We have a couple minutes left before lunch. I have some other, so you'll notice all the blanks. If you missed a blank somewhere, they're all there. And then there's some additional resources, some books. Some of these books are older books. I told you last night, I've been to a lot of conferences. I've read a lot of newer books. I haven't read any newer books in a long time that I really got about children's ministry that I really respected. Ed Dunlop is one of my mentors. He's been a child evangelist for years. He's based out of Georgia. And these 2 books, How to Get These Kids to Listen, I can't wait till Sunday morning. We always give those to new workers. You need to read this. They're older books, but you need to read them. And he has revised both those. There are newer copies of them that they are good, very good material. Godly man. Ab Thomas was my mentor. He was in our church in Ohio. Sharing Christ with children. A lot of good stuff there. When you read that, like Kerby doesn't know anything. All he did is give book reports, all these different books. So if you read all those, you got all my scoop. Okay, I don't know anything new. But you're going to find some great material in there that would help you or maybe help a young leader that is starting to help you. This next resource I want to give you is a website for some digital visuals. There is, I think we all know this. And again, after running a curriculum company ministry for 12 years, you learn to appreciate the importance of copyrights, because we put a lot of work into our materials and then just want everybody copying them, okay? But many times as Christians, we just, I'll just scan this, I'll just scan this. And we need to realize that a lot of these things are copyrighted, okay? This website that I'm getting ready to show you is designed to help Christians, okay? It's called freebibleimages.org. If everything works right, I'm going to take you there, okay? So freebibleimages.org. When you go, looks like I'm not connected to the internet. I was done that on my little personal hotspot. So let me get it reconnected here and we'll try again, okay? So what I'm going to teach you to do is how to use this website to find some visuals that you can easily copy and paste, or whether you want to print them out, or whether you want to do them this way or whatever. Well, let's do it this way. Still not connecting. We may have to do this when we come back after lunch if this doesn't work. Well, we'll try it again after lunch. I'll get it connected over lunch, so I won't spend any more time there. But basically, it'll show you, you go in, and you go into the search bar, and you can put something in. Maybe you're looking for stories about David or whatever, and it'll show some graphics. But I'll get it going during lunch and show this to you when we come back from lunch. So we're going to do something. We're going to skip a little bit in your notes. Okay, so let's do this. We've got some minutes. We'll start on it. You ready? Okay, so we'll go ahead and go to lunch then and just come back a little bit earlier. So it's 10 minutes till 12. Let's come back at 12:30. Does that give you enough time probably to get everybody through and get through the rest of our notes, and then we'll be ready to go home. We're going to play some games at the end. This will be a fun thing, and some of you win some candy, some dessert, okay? But anyway, thank you for being here. So let's do this. Ryan, would you ask a blessing on our food, please?
Father, thank you for the day that we've had already. Pray that you would continue to bless our training, and that you would open our eyes to be open to the compassion we need for kids and what every child is dealing with. Help us to be motivated to do our best because of that, how much you love them, the love you've shown to us. Help us to enjoy this lunch and the fellowship that you've given to us today. Pray that you would bless the food to our body. Thank you for Pastor and Miss Rita who watch our children. We ask that you would just continue to bless as we try to serve you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.